Round Square at CFIS, you've probably heard about before, and of course it's been placed on hold in some respects over the past couple of years, but we're excited that we're able to reintroduce some of the programming that's meant so much to some of our students over the past few years, which is why I felt it important to have the perspectives of those students who have had that chance to really fully experience what Round Square is all about. So now what COVID has permitted us to do is have a Round Square club at school. And I'll get into more of what this is in just a bit here. But mostly what you're probably curious about and what you want to know more about are the conferences and the exchanges available through Round Square. And those are the experiences that are really the milestone experiences through our membership with Round Square. And so this evening I have three former students of CFIS, three alumni who are here to answer some questions about what these conferences and exchange experiences have meant to them. And so I'm going to give them the opportunity to just quickly introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into a bit of a Q&A about the experiences that they've had through Round Square.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabriella. I graduated from CFIS in 2021, and I am currently attending Simon Fraser University, where I'm studying international relations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabrielle. Same as Gabriella. I graduated in 2021, and I'm currently at the University of Ottawa taking conflict studies in human rights, and I'm taking that in French immersion. And then I'm also working in the House of Commons as a page.
Hi guys, I'm Emma. Currently I'm studying at Carleton University, and I'm studying neuroscience and biology.
Wonderful. So we're going to get right into a few questions that I have prepared for these students so that they can talk about what they did as part of the Round Square program. The first question is, do you want to just talk firstly about the experiences that you had through Round Square?
So in 2018, I attended a Round Square conference, which is essentially a bunch of students from all around the world, different countries, all convene at one location, and you get to know each other and learn about each other's countries.
So I also went to a conference, but on top of that, I did an exchange, and they're vastly different experiences. The exchange, I think, is really cool because you get to immerse yourself for quite a long period of time and like focus on relationships with a small group of people, and the conference is really good to expand a lot of your international relationships and like see people's perspectives, because it's still a conference, a discussion on whatever topic they choose.
And then I've done both as well. So just to build off what Gabriella and Emma have said, I would say like the biggest difference for me with the conference at least was it was much more collaborative, and everyone's a little bit more in the same boat. Like you're all meeting together to talk about like pressing world issues and to learn more about each other's countries. Whereas the exchange for me was much more like a personal development thing, because you're not in the same boat as everyone else. You're a student in another country on the other side of the world. And so I think that's the biggest difference that I noticed, like both completely unique, but both like very valuable in their own way.
And if you want to talk, just say a few things about how this experience would have had an impact on you. And Gabrielle, we'll start with you. What do you think this experience or experiences in your case, how did they impact you and even maybe your academic choices?
I think it definitely had a huge impact on me. I think just the global mindset that you get from doing these experiences, you learn to appreciate it a lot more. And it's something that at least I've like wanted to continue on with my post-secondary studies. I mean, what I'm taking is essentially like a niche version of international relations. And then on top of that, I was even asked about it in job interviews for what I'm doing for work right now too. So I think it's something that like it's a value you get from doing this that eventually, like for me at least, I wanted to take with me throughout my education and my career.
And how about you, Emma?
I think that it really encouraged me to force myself to apply to a bunch of different things, a bunch of different aspects in my life. So I was given the opportunity to apply for like a research internship, and I don't know if I would have done that pre-Round Square because I would have been a completely different person, but it teaches you that you are capable of, you know, seeking out bigger and better things and experiencing a lot more in life and learning a lot more.
And how about you, Gabriella? What kind of impact did the conference and your experience with Round Square have on you and your academic path?
I would say it had a huge impact on my life and the course that my life has taken thus far, because just getting the opportunity to meet all of those people and learning about how we're all more similar than we are different. And now the world seems like a smaller place than it did before. So I think had I not gone to the conference, I would have been so scared to leave home for university. But because now in my mind, the world is so connected and it's a smaller place, I was able to do that.
Awesome. And it's so wonderful to hear you speak so positively about these experiences and to see the difference that it's made. So as I said, because we have that bit of a disconnect. We don't have very many students left at CFIS who've had that experience. So I think that it really does help to see how it has had an impact on you. And I think I hear what it's done for your academic path and also how it's helped even with job interviews that you've had. I wonder if you can pinpoint certain skills that this experience has helped you improve or even gain.
So for me, one of the things that I took part in at the conference was the cultural night. So I had to sing and represent Canada in front of 500 or 700 people, which was obviously a very stressful thing. But now I'm not scared of, speaking in public anymore, things like that, because I had that experience.
I remember it was a huge highlight. You brought the house down. Everyone was giving you a standing ovation. And you were the only one brave enough of all the Americas, all of North America, all the schools in North America to do that. So that was a very memorable experience for me too.
Thank you.
Emma, do you have anything to add to that?
In terms of being able to, kind of like Gabby said, go out of your comfort zone, I think on top of that, especially in Canada now with COVID and, democracy, being able to talk about so many things, it has given me the ability to listen to someone else who has a completely different point of view and perspective. And I can listen to them and I can say, totally valid. I still believe myself, or maybe I believe you now, but I am open to a lot more with what people are telling me, and, not focusing on one central mindset and listening and hearing more than just what I see as my first source. So it's definitely broadened my perspective, and it's helped me to open my mind to a lot of things, especially important issues in Canada.
Awesome. And how about you, Gabrielle? Would you say there's a specific skill or competence that you've gained through an experience like an exchange or a conference?
I think it's been able to help me handle uncomfortable situations better, because I'm naturally an introvert. So like big groups of people, like it's kind of stressful for me. So I think learning how to deal with stressful situations when you feel like all eyes are on you, you're out of your comfort zone. I think it just gives you the tools to be able to like better manage that stress in a way, because you get more practice at it from a younger age. And I think that was something that was really helpful to me with both experiences that I did.
Awesome. And you're pinpointing certainly the elements that are important of Round Square, and experiential education is really, that's the purpose, is to get you outside of your comfort zone and to get you to try something new so that you won't settle for less, and that you can see what is inside of you. And it's just in the quick few minutes that we've had chatting, even before starting this meeting, I'm seeing that you're certainly exemplifying that. So I think it's great to see. Last question that I will have before we open it up to the parents that we have here. Is there anything that you would like to say about why you would recommend this experience to CFIS students?
So for me personally, I can't speak highly enough about this experience. I mean, the people that I've met, I've formed such strong connections with, and I'm still in contact with them today, almost 4 years after the conference. So just being able to meet people from around the world and learn about their countries is incredible. And I would absolutely recommend it to everyone. And even if you don't think you would like it going into it, try it, because it's so amazing.
I think you just gain a lot of life experience at a really young age. So there are so many things that I can talk to about people that I meet, especially starting university. Everyone's trying to meet everyone and you don't know anyone. And so you're able to just sit down and have a conversation about who knows what for however long you want. And I think that's why I would do it. I would totally do it because you learn to be comfortable in yourself and you learn to form relationships with people, which in the digital age, pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's certainly been more challenging over the past couple of years, that's for sure. How about you, Gabrielle?
I mean, it was definitely one of the reasons I chose to stay at CFIS for high school. And I think the reason I would encourage other people to do it, honestly, I think Gabriella and Emma really summed it up. It's just the connections you make. Same thing as Gabriella, I'm still in contact with people from both the conference and the exchange. I know even one of the other girls that did Round Square recently met up with one person she met at a conference, which is really cool because that was years ago. And the fact they're still in contact and seeing each other is really interesting. So I thought I'd share that story. And exactly like Emma said too, it's just like having that life experience is something that will serve you down the line, even if it's just in conversation, let alone the skills you get. So I think that is a good reason to do it too.
Before I let these amazing women go, they're women now, just like, I mean, they're from their dorm rooms, taking some time of their busy schedules to come talk to us, which I so appreciate. Any questions from the audience, from parents who would like to ask them about their specific experiences?
I'll ask one if that's okay. So if you are, obviously the travel opportunities for this set of high school kids have been capped. My daughter missed grade 9, missed grade 10. So now her choices are less. If you were to choose between a Round Square versus a class trip to Europe, so next year, Chantal, you're looking at a European trip, which one would you lean towards and why? So one is more kind of with your colleagues, your friends, your peers, you have that safety net, versus Round Square where you may or may not be with friends per se, and you're having to be a bit more independent.
I can start. I'm going to say both are good. I did both as well. I did the travel studies, but I would still say the Round Square experiences, mainly because I feel like I had a greater takeaway from them, being put out of my comfort zone and just like meeting new people from it, and like-minded individuals from like around the world. So I think for me, I would definitely say those two. I also think the experiences are a little more unique. Like I feel like a lot of the CFIS travel studies, a lot of it is very interesting nonetheless, but a lot of it's tour based, and there's a little bit less connection with other people, I find. Not that to say that there's none, but for that reason too, I think just being thrown into an environment with completely new people and without necessarily having the safety net of like your peers and teachers makes Round Square, I think it's easier to take more life lessons out of the Round Square experiences.
I would have to say that I agree with Gabby. I think I would pick Round Square as well, because I mean, it all depends on kind of what sort of person you are, but I was also pretty introverted, and I think that it just throws you into a whole new environment, and without the safety net of your peers with whom you see every day when you go to school, so like it's not like you don't have contact with them, but without that safety net, you're really able to grow into a new mature person, and you understand yourself a lot more, because I think it's really easy on school trips to just stay huddled in your close friend group if they've gone, and in Round Square you have to force yourself to experience new things, and you really get into the culture of it, and you really get into the experience of that country.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Emma and Gabby both said. And I would also agree that I would probably choose the Round Square conference over another trip. And I don't think there's a wrong choice between the two. They'll both be amazing regardless. But for me, the Round Square conference it was like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I got to meet so many incredible people, and I learned a lot about myself too. And I had to learn how to be independent and really go out of my comfort zone and meet people. And so, like Gabby said, I think that the takeaway from the Round Square conference is so much greater, and you'll learn so much more about yourself and about the world as a whole.
Awesome. I think that sums it up really well. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Gabriela, Emma, and Gabrielle, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come share a little bit more about your experiences, giving us some insight, and sharing why you think these experiences were so important in shaping your years at CFIS, and also defining what it is that you would like to do beyond your years at high school. I think you spoke very eloquently, very well about these experiences, and just made me want to get on a plane and start high school all over again to be able to do that as well. So I know that your experiences and your stories are very valuable. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with us this evening. And I'll let you go so that you can get back to studying and doing everything that you need to do to keep up with a busy university life. So thank you again. Yeah, so I have goosebumps whenever I hear students speak about their Round Square experiences, and I hope that I'm not alone in that. I think that they speak about their experiences so well, and it comes from the heart, and it really, I think, changes your DNA in a way to go through an experience like that at such a young age. It really can have an impact, and that's really the spirit of Round Square. Everything that they were saying, it really touches upon what Round Square is all about. It really is that idea. Kurt Hahn, who's the founder of Round Square and considered by many as the father of experiential education, it's all about pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. It's all about experiencing things and living things that for the rest of your life, you'll know, okay, this is something that I'm capable of. I'm never going to settle for less. But yes, so I think that they really presented that well, and I didn't even script them. That was totally up to them, but that's really what it's all about. It's building those skills and those competencies through experiences, through pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and recognizing that there's more in you than you know. And so the experiences that are offered through Round Square and through the Round Square, under the Round Square umbrella, really have that as the end goal. And so one of the things that the silver linings of COVID has been the International Change Leaders Club, which is our CFIS Round Square Club. It had the time to emerge last year through COVID because we had so many chances to have virtual discussions with other schools. This is not something that was done very frequently before. But these virtual exchanges and that chance to have an online discussion with another group, with another school. Just today, actually, are a few members of our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Club wanted to catch up with some members from other Round Square schools who have similar clubs. And so they had a lunchtime meeting with students from Peru, from Connecticut, from Brazil, from Montreal, and just kind of shared some ideas about what it is that they do in their schools to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it's really great for them to get to hear different perspectives on how things happen in different countries and to build those connections. And I'm sure many of them will run into these people that they've met online through conferences or exchanges down the line. And so this is kind of a stepping stone into the in-person experiences, such as the conferences that the girls talked about. So the conferences happen a few times a year normally. There's always one big international conference, which is called the Round Square International Conference. And that's a time where all Round Square schools get together in one place. And this is the one that's open to students turning 16 all the way to 18 years old. So as long as a student turns 16 in that school year, they're allowed to submit an application to be a delegate. So typically what happens on a conference, it represents the Round Square ideals of internationalism, democracy, environmentalism, adventure, leadership, and service. And there are usually some activities that are around that. So there's typically a service day. Adventure day could be, sightseeing or doing an activity that is based in that country that we're visiting. And as Gabriela mentioned, there's always usually a talent show or a few talent shows during the week. And the students get an opportunity to hear from various keynote speakers. They break out into different rooms to have discussions where there are multiple different perspectives from students from around the world. And they just get to spend and meet some time, basically like summer camp, international summer camp in an international location. And so some of the locations that we have been able to go on conference, the first one that we went to was in South Africa. And because, of course, some of these destinations are quite far away and it takes quite a bit of time to get there, we want to take the opportunity to see what some of these sites have to offer as well. And so we have the opportunity to do a pre or a post conference tour. So that means that we get the chance to just see a different part of the country, whether that be through a safari with other schools or, excuse me, doing some volunteering like we did in India. So depending on the location and the timing, then we will typically choose a destination close by so that we get the chance to see another part of that country. Might as well, since we're taking all that time to fly there. The conferences, as I mentioned, the big international ones happen every year, typically in the fall, so September, October, and they're for students who will turn 16 sometime in that school year. So if they're not 16 by the time we leave, as long as they turn 16 sometime in that school year, it's okay. So typically, I would say the youngest students that we would bring are generally in grade 10. In 2019, it was in India, and this coming year, it's going to be in Europe, which means next year, it's going to be somewhere on the African continent. And so that's what you can have to look forward to over the next few years. There are also what we call regional or global conferences. So those are not quite as big. They're not the official big round square conference, but they happen on a smaller scale, and they can accommodate students who are a little bit younger. Okay, so students who are in junior high can participate in the regional or global conferences. The options for next year have not yet been announced, but once they have been published, then we'll start considering which ones work best with our school calendar. And we are usually allowed to bring a delegation anywhere between 5 to 10 students, depending on the conference. Now, for the next international conference that's coming up, this has been announced and we already know kind of what to expect. This is going to take place at the Oxford campus in the UK. That's where we're going to start. So the whole Round Square delegation from all different Round Square schools from around the world will meet there first. And then after that, we're going to be spread out across 4 different campuses across the UK. 4 different Round Square schools we're going to be bused there. So we'll be assigned to a specific school where we'll conclude the conference. So applications have gone out already for this, and I'll start accepting them after spring break. So students who are now in grade 9 can certainly think of applying, same as students who are currently in grade 10 or 11. We're anticipating the cost to be somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000, depending. There are some bursaries available for students if we want to limit those costs. So this is some exciting news about these bursaries that are now available. For the first time, we have a Round Square Travel Studies bursary. So as of next year, we'll be able to offer a $1,000 bursary for a family in need to help them participate in these kinds of experiences. And as we heard in the presentations just earlier, these experiences can be life-affirming, can be life-changing, can really set students on a path that they did not even know existed for them. And we really want these students, every CFIS student, to have the opportunity to experience something like this if they want to. And so this is with this spirit in mind that the CFIS Round Square Travel Studies bursary was put in place. And we were fortunate enough to have a large donation made last year to kick this off. And right now, there's an opportunity to have even more donations set in so that more CFIS students can have this experience. So a donor has said that they will match up to $5,000 for these donations if they're made by April 7th. So if this is something that your family is able to contribute to and believes in, then I would highly encourage you to do so. It would be wonderful to see these opportunities continue to grow and continue to be accessible for all students, because they can have such an amazing impact on these students and their lives and their confidence and their skill set. So that's just with CFIS. Now with Round Square, there are quite a number of bursaries available as well. They have some that will reduce some of the delegate fees. If students want to be a bit of a reporter on the ground and take photos and write blogs about what it is that they're experiencing. There's also some discovery bursaries that they can apply for. And there are some leadership prizes as well. So any student who'd be interested in receiving a bit more information about this, they can just let me know and I'll send them to the website where they can find all the information about how to apply for these specific bursaries to help offset some of the costs of these experiences. Now the conferences, that is similar, I would say, in cost to the travel studies experiences. The difference is that they're able to go typically for about a 2-week period. So the trip is usually a bit longer in length, and it is a very unique travel experience. It's not something that you can replicate. And exchanges are also, can be certainly a more affordable way of approaching travel, because basically what you need to cover is airfare, and you need to be able to receive someone in your home and care for them through room and board. And so we've had families who have been able to afford this experience, for example, getting some air mile points and paying for their child's flight in that way. Most of our exchange experiences are reciprocal. That means that a student comes and stays with you, and then your child would go and stay either with that family, or if it's a boarding school, then stay in that boarding school for a similar amount of time. Our exchanges at CFIS are typically for grade 9 to 12 students. That's when we found that students are ready for this kind of experience, because it's usually from anywhere between 3 weeks, and 3 weeks is very short. Most students who go for 3 weeks wish that they would have stayed for a little bit longer. It can go up to 2 months, especially if it's over the summer months. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Depending on where the student ends up, they could be staying with a host family, just like we would have students who come visit us here at CFIS. They all stay with host families because we don't have a boarding school environment. But some of them do have a boarding school type of environment, and so they would stay in a dorm. So if you look at where our round square schools are, everywhere. Okay, there are lots of different possibilities. Now, if you're worried about what your child could miss at school, if you're not quite sure that you want your child to miss any schooling on their exchange experience, then I would highly recommend choosing a school that is just below the equator here. Okay, the difference being that these schools operate on a different calendar than ours, because their summer is when our winter is. Okay, so what we've had in the past is some of our students go on exchange during the summer months. So they'll go to Argentina, let's say, for July and August, and then they come back and they haven't missed any schooling, but they've still had an incredible experience that has been something that they were very fortunate and happy to have had the chance to do. So any of the schools that are going to be in the Southern Hemisphere, that's a great option to look at if you would not like for your child to miss too much school. I know that's usually a question that a lot of parents have, so I'll definitely get to that here at the end. But also a lot of the questions that I receive are, what are some of the schools that you exchange with? And so the ones that we have had experiences with so far, United World Colleges in Singapore. This is also, speaking of Kurt Hahn as the father of experiential education and the founder of Round Square, also had a hand in founding the United World Colleges, with just recently received a Nobel Peace Prize nomination. These are truly international schools. There are some campuses around the world. And this particular school has over 4,000 students. This is the school that Gabby went to when Gabby Plastiras, when she went on exchange. This is the school that she went to in Singapore. They have a strong outdoor education and international focus. That was the one thing that she noted when she came back, is that what she learned from the different students and the different perspectives while she was there really opened her eyes to a much wider world. We've had lots of successful exchanges as well with schools in Australia. Here, there's an option of either staying with a homestay family or in a boarding school. Lots of different boarding school options available in Australia. Some of our students want that. They want that experience. And so if that's something that they would like, there's certainly no shortage of options for that in Australia. Another good option for our students have been schools in South America. And of course, because this is an opportunity to really practice the Spanish. And so we've had students have exchanges in Colombia, in Argentina, and we've welcomed students from Peru. COVID put a wrench in plans for having our students go there, but certainly it's in the works and we want to have that happen soon. But the students that we've received from these countries have been phenomenal. The experiences that our students had have been also incredibly positive. Most of the time what happens is that these classes are bilingual. So they have some English classes, but they also have some Spanish classes. The socializing often happens in Spanish. So it is a good opportunity for them to get that language learning in and that language practice and to really be immersed in a new culture as well. The school that Emma did an exchange with is Gordonston, which is the original Round Square school. It is a boarding school. Typically, our students have gone there in January and February. It used to be open to grade 9 to 10 students, but now they're wanting to focus more on the older students. But this is also a big experiential learning school. And the students that we've sent 4 students to this school already, and they've all had such a fabulous experience because this school takes all of their exchange students at the same time. And so this is an opportunity for them to really get to know students from Round Square schools from around the world. Another school that we've started building relationships with, and we're about to send students on exchange before COVID happened, is Salem School in Germany, which is also one of the other original Round Square schools. It is a boarding school, and this one's mostly open to students in grades 9 and 10. So a lot of interest for European schools. This is one that we have established a relationship with. And oftentimes students that forced to make that exchange partnership, they have to have an interest in coming to us. And what we found is that a lot of students who want to practice their French, this has been a great place for them to land because they have, you know, the best of both worlds. They get the chance to learn in French here, to practice it a bit, but not in an environment that's too intense. They still get to socialize in English, which has been positive for them. So for this particular experience, how do students apply? There are some applications on D2L already. I've already started receiving some of them. So students interested in going on an exchange would have to have this completely filled in and have it signed by a teacher, have it signed by their head of house, and also by our principal of secondary, Mr. Dreyfus. And so this will need to, like I said, for me to be able to have that time to make those connections, to be able to plan it out, to have, you know, early bird gets the worm. Sometimes we luck out and it just so happens that where a student wants to go and timing works out very well, but the more time we have to work this out, the better it is and the smoother it is. So that's why we want those applications in for exchanges that are going to be happening next year. We want to have them in by April or early May of this year so that it can start to make that happen. So what's going to happen is after we've received the applications, we've typically done about 10 exchanges per year. That's about what we have the capacity for. And so we do a house visit. We check to make sure that the student would be in good hands. So just to make sure here, just to let you know what that is, it doesn't mean that I'm going to walk around with a, you know, with a checklist and a clipboard and look at, you know, the amount of dust that's in your house. That's not the purpose. It's really just to make sure that the student would have good accommodation. If there's a basement bedroom, for example, I just need to make sure that the windows are large enough, that it's a legal bedroom, just to make sure that the student, it will have safe housing. Okay. We also ask that every adult living in the home go through a police information check with vulnerable sector. Some of you might already have a valid one through the school. In that case, I would just need to verify. And then of course, there's some hosting guidelines, just some normal things that you would expect, anything that you would want a family to abide by if your child were to go abroad and stay with a family. Just making sure that they are safe and that they have a place to just be themselves and feel included, and just certain guidelines on how to make sure that that's the case. We go through those, we sit down, we have a chat. So that's what happens when we prepare to send students abroad for an exchange. Okay. So I'm getting to the last slide here, which is our most frequently asked questions. And after that, you'll certainly have a chance to ask some if I didn't touch upon one that's on this list. So I touched upon this earlier when I said schoolwork. If that's something, a concern that you might have, or you don't want your child to miss too much schoolwork, then to choose a school where they could possibly go on exchange during the summer, especially if they're in the older grades. That might be something that you're looking at. Now, it might not be possible for everyone, and that is completely okay. Some schools, in fact, that a student might have an eye on, don't accept students during the summer. So that means that they will miss some school. And so in those cases, what happens is the student needs to be able to catch up on what it is that they'll miss, okay? Every student who's gone through this experience will tell you that they wish that they would have been a bit more proactive before leaving. They wish they would have gotten a little bit more done so that when they got back, they wouldn't have to catch up on as much. Their workload won't be, there will be some things that they will be exempted from in certain classes, but they're in some classes that won't be possible. And it will be up to the student to make sure that they're keeping up on D2L and meeting with their teacher when they're getting back to make sure that they're catching up. Okay, so this is something that they're able to do during their flex time or over lunch, or perhaps in after school meetings. And also what would often happen is students would keep up on their homework when they were away. They would have time, especially in a boarding school environment. There are a lot of study hall periods. So the students would look at what their CFIS homework was looking like at that time, and they would sit down with it. And if they had any math questions, then they would ask their questions to the math teacher in their round square school, and that was totally fine, right? That was a way for them to stay on top of things and not leave everything to when it is that they return. So it's about striking that balance between, you know, staying somewhat up to date, but also remembering that this is a once in a lifetime experience, and we don't want the students to just be working in their room on their CFIS homework the whole time. So where it is possible, the workload will be lessened in certain classes. And then of course, in some classes where that's not as easy to do, then they might be responsible to catch up on some of that work when they're back. But I've yet to see a CFIS student who's gone on exchange say that they wish they didn't have their exchange experience, and that they could have, you know, the trade-off for them has always been so far completely worth it. Some of the students who are interested in coming on exchange or going to the conference, because those spots are limited. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but for example, for the UK conference, we can bring a delegation of 6 students. There is a wait list. Sometimes we're able to bring more. And there's depends on the year, right? The year that it was supposed to be in Australia, our conference, we had 16 students apply and only 5 spots. So it really depends on the destination and how popular it is. And so in those cases, if it is very popular of a destination and we don't necessarily have as many spots as we have interest, does it help to be part of the Round Square Club? And my answer to that is yes, just the same way as it helps when, for example, you have a reference for a job who's able to vouch for you and say what a fabulous employee you are and how you should be hired. Because I am part of the committee that sits and discusses whether or not this student is the best candidate, I can personally speak to it because I've worked with them so closely, right? So certainly it helps. And it also shows that the student has an interest in these things to start with, beyond just the element of travel. So it certainly does help, but is it essential? No. There is oftentimes lots of stuff that we discover about our students in these application processes. We see their involvement in different organizations that are not necessarily part of CFIS, but still are very reflective of the ideals of Round Square. And that's an opportunity for us to sit down with them and see all these great things that they're doing. So you don't necessarily need to be a part of the club, the Round Square Club to have a better chance to be selected for these programs. And the cost can vary. Typically conferences can vary between $3,000 to $6,000 depending on where it is. Exchanges, as I said, can be very affordable, especially if you catch a good flight, good price right now. The flights are great prices. Not sure how long that's going to stay the case. And certainly for these experiences, it's possible, as I said, to, for example, get a flight on points, right? But you may be responsible for paying for insurance, for example, when the student is away. That's something that we require. And then whatever cost to host the student in your home, that has to be factored in as well. So am I guaranteed to go? I mean, there's a good chance, but there is no guarantee, especially if I've seen students say, I just want to go to this particular school. And if that's the case, then certainly it's more difficult to guarantee that. There are two schools in Paris, for example. There's one brand new one, École Alsacienne, that has just added itself to the Round Square network, and one that's been there for a while, and they receive hundreds of applications. Right. So there's certain locations that are just very sought after. And so it certainly helps to be open to different experiences and different locations to increase your chances of being accepted. So what can help your chances? Well, it's certainly to show an interest in these activities and these initiatives, to show that you have, whether it be through the school clubs or through your own initiatives, that you have an interest in the pillars of Round Square, in internationalism, democracy, environment, adventure, leadership, service. Being able to articulate that on your application certainly helps, because just like we want to make sure that we're receiving a student that's going to be a great ambassador of the school and of Calgary and their country, schools that are receiving our students want to make sure that we're sending the very best of our students too, and that it's going to be a positive experience for everyone. So certainly showing your interest and your abilities and your aptitudes in these areas can be helpful at a time of application. I'm not sure if I touched upon everything, every question that you might possibly have. Surely you might have some more. So I'm going to open it up to you now. Do you have any questions about the Round Square exchanges, about the conferences?
So when is the conference, the UK conference? Do you know when that's scheduled to happen?
Yes. So that is going to be from September 19th to the 25th. If we do a conference that's attached to a pre-conference, they're not having any pre-conferences for this one. They're trying to avoid students traveling before coming to the conference. So it'll be, if we do anything in addition to this, it'll be a post-conference tour. And the details on that have not emerged yet. So we're looking at possibilities here of just being able to offer the conference experience. So students who just want to go to the conference and don't want to do a post-conference trip, that they be able to do that, which would make the cost significantly less. Or students who want to also take part in the post-conference, you could add on 5 to 6 days to that end there. So it would be from the 19th, probably up until right up to the end of September is the time that they would be away if they also participate in a post-conference tour.
Is the post-conference just CFIS, or is it just all participants?
It's so usually this is a really fun part because we get to travel with other schools. So we will usually travel with 4, 5, 6 other schools from all over the place. So they really get to know these students from these different places very well because it's a smaller group size. And so it's like a travel studies opportunity, but with new friends. And so, yeah, that's been really a highlight as well, is getting to know students. And of course, they will have probably spent a few days with them already at the conference. So, so yes, that's an opportunity that we usually explore with a few other schools.
And is there a CFIS staff member or teacher with them the whole time?
Yes.
Okay.
It's to be me.
Good. Well, that's good news. That makes me happy.
Yeah, so it's me, and it'll be a member of admin as well.
Okay. And one last question before so I don't hog the whole thing, but you were thinking of Europe as a travel study potentially. Do you have any, like, are you looking at France again, like you were going to do this past year, or?
Yes, there was a lot of interest in that. So it's going to be likely similar to one that we did a few years ago, was looking at the Canadian battlefields. So France, Belgium, the Netherlands, maybe Germany as well.
So this year it didn't happen, not enough interest. Do you feel confident that you'll have enough interest? Because obviously with Round Square, you need a fewer number of people saying yes to make it happen. Versus travel studies where you need a larger number of people to commit, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think so, especially given the fact that we haven't been able to travel, right, for the past few years. Add to that just the fact that in being able to advertise these trips, I'm hoping to have them all announced by the end of May. That extra time to pay is also going to make it less of a burden.
Okay.
So I think so. Most of the years, even with Round Square experiences, I've been able to run 2 senior high trips, sometimes even 3. And next year we'll have even more students in the senior high than we've had in previous years. So I anticipate that we will have a positive response to that. This year, unfortunately, just because of the short notice and because the timing of the trip, right, with a new variant emerging, it was not ideal.
No. And would that be intended for spring break?
Yes. So usually I present a trip option for February break and one for spring break as well.
Okay.
And I know, like I'm thinking of Emma, even like she wanted to do it all. She did, I think that year she did the conference and she did an exchange and she did a travel studies trip, and she worked all summer to save up some money to be able to do all of those experiences. So if your children are super interested in this, maybe that's something, maybe that's okay, well, maybe they pay for a portion of it, who knows, right? But hopefully having that added time to be able to pay for it will make it a bit more accessible, and then hopefully with the bursaries as well, it'll make it more accessible to some families.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. Any other questions?
I got a question from a family today that was asking if there is a language requirement for hosting a student from another country. So do they have to know French to come to CFIS? And then if our family doesn't speak French, how does that work?
No, yeah, that's a great question. No, it's not required. I would be shocked if I received that sort of requirement from another school, actually. Students who come here, we've had some who speak excellent French, and we have some who have very basic French. So as long as they're able to communicate in some, and even, in some cases that might be a great learning situation. We've had some students coming with Spanish as a first language, whose English has been, not great, and they still find a way to make it happen, right? It's just, that's part of the experience as well. So I have not seen that come up as a requirement from some of our schools or exchange families so far.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Any other questions?
Chantal, could you just reiterate the dates again for this Oxford conference here? And I think it falls within the school time, so they'll have to kind of work before and after to catch up in schoolwork, right?
Exactly. Yes. So this is very similar. And if a student goes on an exchange experience or a conference experience, it's very similar. Both situations, their teachers are made aware that they're leaving and that they won't have time when they're on their conference to keep up on schoolwork. So whatever it is that they can be exempted from, they will be exempted from. The good thing about this being in September, so from September 19th, probably up until the end of September, if they're doing a post-conference, is that it leaves quite a bit of time to catch up when they do return. So that time of year is a better time of year to miss for a conference, I would say, just because it is in the beginning of the year and there's some review and skill building. Mostly that is the focus at the start of the first few weeks. So students have found that it is a bit easier to catch up when they miss school in those first few weeks. Great question. Any other, and the applications for that, as I'm not sure if I mentioned, but they are on D2L, so students can have access to them. And I'll be picking them up the week after spring break. So we resume schooling on April 4th. So I'll be picking them up by April 11th. And then we'll start the interview process with the students. Well, thank you so much for coming in, for listening to our guest speakers who came in at the beginning, and to hear me speak without the support of my PowerPoint here. Hopefully it was a pretty small screen, but hopefully you got the information that you were looking for. And at any moment in time, please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions, if anything else comes up. I'm always more than happy to answer any round score questions. I truly see the value in this program and the opportunities that it affords our students and the impact it can have. So it's truly my pleasure to speak to you about this, and I thank you for coming.